everyone and welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. My name is Jem and today we're heading back into the beautiful book The Circle of Life. Every time I say that it reminds me of the very popular Disney song. I'm sure you all know which one I'm talking about. But we're going to carry on today with the page that we started in this lovely little sort of mountain scene, and we're going to work a little bit more on our mountains today. So just a reminder, we are using Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, and the colours that we're using for the mountains, I'll just put them up on the screen for you now. That was the Sanguine, the Burnt Sienna and the Burnt Ochre. So again, just to show you those swatches, there's the Burnt Ochre and the Sanguine is here. So this nice kind of reddish brown, and also the Burnt Sienna down here. As before, I've got my little Derwent battery eraser here as well, and if you remember I'd put in some graphite lines here just to remind myself, so that's what this is for, just to erase them as we go. So let's get fired in with these mountains again and see if we can make a good job of this. So we're literally just taking it a peek at a time. A peek at a time. Not a peek as in to look, a peek as in a peek. And we start off with our lightest pencil, which is the Burnt Ochre, and we can get our light layer down here. I'll bring this all the way down. Now I'm meeting with one of my pencil lines here, so this is where our shadow is going to be cast. So although this part is on the left hand plane of our mountain, because our light source is here and it's heading directly behind this mountain, this part's actually going to be in shadow. And I have a funny feeling here as well. We've got this little section here, which is very similar to what was going on over here. It's more front facing than facing towards the light source. So we're going to make this section here much, much darker. And the way to do that is just to use the same pencil. I'm going to have to erase my graphite line here. Get out the way. The other thing I use sometimes as well, I didn't mention it in the last video, I've got this really soft makeup brush. It is super, it's like as soft as my dog's ears. And I use that just to flick off my shavings. It's also quite handy if you're using really soft pencils like Prismacolors. It's really good for just getting rid of pigment rather than using your hand because it tends to smear it. See, this was really cheap, but it's perfect. It's good for this job. So if we just keep going over this little section here that I think is more front facing, so we're still using the lighter colour, which gives us that contrast between the really dark part and the lighter side. But if we put in loads of layers, it's really going to give that illusion that it's facing the other way. So we just keep going back over it. Now if you do lots of light layers, then you're going to get on a lot better than just trying to mash the pencil into the paper, especially if you're sticking with the Polychromos. If you're using Prismacolors, again, you know, if you're using a really soft pencil, you'll be able to go in really hard and just get that one really vibrant saturated layer. So as we head from the peak to the left hand side, I would imagine that down here this would be a little bit darker, but there's a lot of undulations, so you can use your discretion here. And maybe only the very edges in the actual crease of this ridge here would be truly being hit by the sun. Now again, we can always go back in and add more if we feel it's a little bit lacklustre, so we'll leave that just now and we'll get this part in here. So I'm going to put down a quick layer of the lightest colour of the Burnt Ochre, just very quickly, and then we can get to work with this Sanguine. So it is the day after my wedding anniversary. I've had to switch up which videos I'm filming when for various reasons. So needless to say, it's only 8 o'clock in the morning, and I have to say I'm feeling a little bit worse for wear this morning. Mostly tired because it was quite a late night last night, but yeah, I was expecting to feel a bit fresher than this if I'm honest, but I had the best food ever last night, and I was so full. We didn't even look at a dessert menu. I was like, oh, this is good. Not that I'm a big one on desserts anyway, but Mr. Jem is. And it was, the food was fabulous. I was really, really happy with it. So this is my shadow pencil now. This is my darkest colour, which is the Burnt Sienna. And I really want to get this quite dark in here because this is tucked away in. And I think what I'm going to do is go back to the Burnt Ochre and just fill in that little white gap there. So again, maybe the sun's catching it a wee bit, but not too much. So in this next section here, this is where we're crossing over into this sort of shadow territory, you know, because this peak's casting this shadow down here. So I'm going to introduce another pencil, and that is going to be the indigo, the dark indigo. So again, I'll just show you in here. I'll put the name up on the screen for you. And if I just show you up here, so it's like a really dark inky blue, but if you notice in the lighter incarnation, it's actually quite delicate, which is really, really nice. And I'm going to use this to effectively cast the shadow. Now, there's a lot of schools of thought around the colour of shadows. I try and keep it as simple as possible. So I'm just erasing my my graphite line here again. Give it a brush. Get off. So this is where it's probably going to get a little bit more complicated. So we'll start on the light side because that's nice and easy, but we've got this little dip here, and that's basically where I think the shadow's going to start, and it's not going to be a uniform line because this shape here is not uniform, so we're kind of going to go a bit sort of erratic there. And then grabbing the sanguine, just maybe in some of these creases here, I'm just going to put a tiny tickle of that in, a wee bit in there. And then I'm going to build up this lightest colour down in the dip. So I'm making kind of like smiley face motions here. That's not very technical, I'm sorry. Describes what I'm doing though, doesn't it? It does a job. So we can just build this up as well. So things are about to get a little bit frantic here in the coming weeks. It is edging ever closer to harvest time, which is hands down my least favourite time of the year on the farm. I absolutely hate harvest. Partially because I'm not really involved in it. I'm basically a support mechanism for all the boys, because when you get to harvest you are depending on the weather, and basically as long as it's dry you have to keep going. And it's truly the only time of year where I worry about my husband. Like I really do, because I'm sure a lot of you will know tiredness and driving, you know, I'm talking about extreme tiredness and driving don't go well together, and I'm always a bit concerned about the safety of the boys, and harvest just feels like it goes on forever. Like yes it is, literally it's usually like 4 weeks tops depending on the weather, but I just hate it. So everybody's getting geared up for that. We're getting all the machinery ready. I'm just going in with the sanguine here, so I'm just doing what I did before, but we're going to work on this a little bit more. So we need to keep light layers because we're going to be using a lot of layers here. Yeah, so I'm really not looking forward to it. You think I'd be used to it by now. Mr. Jem and I have been a team for nearly 10 years, but yeah, I just hate it. I absolutely hate it. And Mr. Jem comes in at all hours of the day and night. So I'm not really looking forward to that. I just hope the weather stays good so that they can get done quickly and efficiently. But we'll see. I'm just like, oh God. Like, here we go again. I say I should be over it by now after all this time, but I'm really not. Okay, so I've got my darkest pencil here, which is the burnt sienna. So this is really the start of where this really deep shadow is going to be cast. So I'm being quite liberal here with my pencil, and I'm just sort of flicking it into what was going on here. Now I'm going to grab my dark indigo, and just on these edges here, very lightly, I'm just going to start flicking downwards. So you can see there that's quite subtle, but there's definitely a darker shadow. So if I now go back with my burnt sienna, then I can just make this a bit richer, but also mute out the blue a little bit. So really we're utilising this pencil because it's dark rather than because it's blue. And the further we come this way in these little corners, that's going to be pretty dark in there. So just go back in with that indigo again. So for this section here now, so this is this part that comes and slopes down to our waterfall. Again, this plane, if the waterfall's coming along and down like this plane here is facing this way. You know, this is the front. So we have to think about that as well, but that looks as if it kind of twists down and round like this way. Really difficult to try and explain things with your hands, even though I gesticulate with my hands all the time. So what we want to do is we'll bring the lightest colour down a little bit, and it's just to give us a graduation. So I'll just kind of like flick that down a little bit to maybe there. And then what I want to do is I want to go straight in with the burnt sienna, so I'm not using the sanguine at all here because we want this to be quite dark. And again, just with that flicking motion, we're just going to do a section at a time. And I can bring this in down in my trees a little bit here. So we'll not worry too much about the trees just now, we can get them later. I'm just trying to see where the edge of the line work is for the river. There, it's there. And again, we can bring this up in a sort of more irregular pattern. I don't need it to match my mountain perfectly. I'm not that fussy on that, to be honest. But we do want like a definitive area, you know, where you can see that, okay, this is the shadow. So I'll just build this up a little bit in here now as well. Now there is quite a lot of texture, so we can vary our line pressure just to follow some of the lines of the artwork a little bit. So you can see I've pressed really heavily in some places and not in others. And then we can go back to our lightest colour and just fill these in. So my friend was telling me, just now I was talking about Harvest there, my friend was telling me she started watching Clarkson's Farm, and it's available on, I think it's Amazon Prime. Oh, so it's available on Amazon Video. And my friend is not a farmer, she has nothing to do with farming. And I said to her, I said, you really should watch it because it's very entertaining. I know Jeremy Clarkson is a person who, he's a bit like Marmite, you either love him or hate him. But in this context, he's incredible. But it's actually a really good programme for people that are non-farmers to watch, because it really helps you understand, you know, the kind of things that we do and what's involved. And because he did this, he filmed it just before the pandemic started as well, so it kind of takes you through that journey as well. So she's really enjoying it, and even if you're not a farmy person, I think everyone should watch that programme, because it gives you a really good insight as to what goes on in British farming. And it's not a small farm he's got, it's really not a small farm. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Mr. Jem and I watched it, and we thought, oh, this might be rubbish, but it was actually really, really good. Okay, so I'm going back to my burnt sienna now, and we are going to head into this big section here. So this is our first layer of pencil here, and we're just going to bring this all the way down, cover the whole area. Now the sun might be catching this tiny little bit here, so we can maybe do something interesting with that. So I do want a little bit of warmth in this section, so I'm going to grab the sanguine and I'm just going to go over the top of some of these sections, maybe bring that round there a little bit. Again, you don't have to be too choosy with that. And then go back to my burnt sienna and start to make this a little bit richer. So again, varying my pencil pressure because we don't want this to be flat colour. Although it's going to be in shadow and it's going to be quite dark, you still want to have some sort of interest there because it is a very interesting and complex shape. So we do want to try and keep that in mind. See, not imperative, not even slightly, but we might as well do a good job if we can. I think this little part over here, I keep looking at it, I think I'm going to go in with my ochre, just in these very edges here. So I'm kind of using this as a cut-off point. Again, I like to break things down into sections. I find it much easier, especially when it's something as complicated as this. Blend that in with the ochre a little bit there as well. Again, maybe just that very tip there. Okay, so with the indigo pencil now, this is where we're going to do some work. So I'm following the contours of the mountain itself, and I'm keeping very, very light pressure here. I'm just going to work on this little section here. So I'm now jumping between the indigo and the burnt sienna. There we go. And then we can just start working over section by section here. Doing a section like this is very much a case of just doing it by eye, and it's good to kind of like step away sometimes and then come back to it and see whether or not you've got what you want where you want. And I do that a lot. I'm a huge advocate of that. Just want to get a little bit more brown here. And snake our way down here. So you can see how easy I'm making it for myself just by literally going one ridge at a time. And I think it's often one of these things, and I've heard a lot of you say to me in comments about, you know, not wanting to touch a book because it's overwhelming or the fear of ruining it. And you can literally take a weeny little section at a time and you can make a really good job of things. And I just hope that this has shown you how easy it is. Now this part here, I'm just going to build up with the ochre a little bit, because I feel like that's a really natural place to stop, and I might even put a little bit of sanguine in there as well. And I feel like this shadow needs to be a bit deeper here as well. So you can see the difference now between down here and here. We've got a shadow, it's not black, it's actually quite subtle, but you can tell that it's in shadow. That was kind of what I was hoping was going to happen. So we'll just carry on down here now. Now this section here, again, is more facing the viewer, so let's do that. And same here, pressing a little bit harder there. And then this is us into our shadow section here. And we'll just keep working away here until we've got the sort of desired depth of colour. So the other thing that's happening today, and the reason I'm filming at 8 o'clock in the morning, is that my joiner is coming today to start on my decking, which is the area right outside the cave window. So he had texted me to tell me it was coming near 10 o'clock. I'm assuming he's picking supplies up before he comes. So I was like, right, okay, let's get in and get filming while we can. It is actually working out better. I know I mentioned last time that I was like switching up my routine, and filming first thing in the morning is much better. I am a morning person though, so that kind of makes sense. I just feel a lot more, but not this morning. This morning's not a good example. But normally I'm ready to go. I'm absolutely full of beans first thing in the morning. And I'm much more productive in the first half of my day than I am in the second half of my day. So in terms of that sort of self-motivation, which, to be fair, I have to have in my normal job as well, because I don't have anyone telling me I've got to work set hours. I dictate how much work I do for my proper job. But that's different. It's a lot more, like there's a lot more processes, and there's things that I do on certain days. So I find it easier in the afternoon to do that, because it's a bit more, not mechanical, but it's a very sort of set routine that I have. Whereas when I'm doing stuff for YouTube and the shop, there's huge variations in what I'm doing on certain days. And unsurprisingly, you will not be alarmed to hear or surprised that I find it very difficult to motivate myself to edit videos. I can't stand it. So yes, first thing in the morning, much better. Happy Gem, and it's nice, it's lovely jubbly. So the added complication I've got just now though is normally I'll do my YouTubing stuff, and then I will take the dogs OUT for their first WALK of the day, and that's all fine and well, but the problem is just now we don't have any empty fields. Obviously we are slap bang in the middle of our grazing season and harvest. The crops are nearly ready. So we there's a couple of weeks where I have to walk. Oh, shh. Nobody heard me, it's fine. I have to take them OUT and walk them, god damn it, out on the road, which is fine. I do that maybe 2 days a week anyway, because it helps to keep their claws short. Just walking on the tarmac. And obviously we don't have any pavements round here. So, you are walking on the road, which is fine. I mean, it's really quiet around here. You get an odd tractor that passes by or whatever, but the dogs are well trained, and they know that when there's traffic coming that they've to sit in at the side and sit down. That was one of the very first things we teach them, and they're great. I mean, they're really, really good. So yeah, the problem with that is though, you can... Jock's actually asleep, so this is fine, and Pip's not in earshot. You can walk a collie until its legs fall off. It will not tire them out. You don't walk collies. They need mental stimulation, and if you are exercising them, they need to be running. The expression we use is blowing out your arse, till they're ready to fall down, and then that might keep them satisfied for a wee while. So when I'm taking them out on the road, I'm walking for like an hour, at a brisk pace, and I take the little Jack Russell out separately, because she's more at the stage where she just wants to meander. You can't take her on a brisk outing anymore. I've been doing that the last couple of days, and it's this huge chunk of time, this hour. Normally I would spend maybe 40 minutes twice a day with the dogs in a field, just doing a bit of work with them, doing some sheepy commands, because we still do that even though we don't have sheep anymore, because it keeps them sharp, and it's making them think even though they're exercising. And also take a tennis ball with me as well and throw the tennis ball. Pip loves a tennis ball. Obviously out on the road you can't do that, so even though I'm spending an hour twice a day taking them out, the dogs aren't tired and they're not satisfied, they're bored. So that's changing today as well. I'm going to have a field by the end of the day, which is great, and I can't wait to get Pip out and get her moving again, because she's absolutely doing my head in. Like, she pesters me all day long. I'm like, I'm really sorry, I don't have time for this because I've got to work. So that will be a happy change today as well. Okay, that's starting to look fairly good. I'm quite happy with that and how this is going. And obviously this shadow is going to become more prominent, because we are going to be bringing it down here, all the way down here. I've hit my graphite line on this side now. So I'm going to leave that there, and I'm just going to do this little section in here, so that I've got to the end of this, like this part of the mountain peak. Oh, it's like the cows are getting moved around. There's a lot of mooing going on outside. I don't know if you can hear that or not. Hopefully not. I don't think the mic's picking it up. That's good. That's good for me. I'll pop a little bit of this in here. So I've just got this tiny little section in here. Oh, there we go. Moo. Oh, goodness me. Okay, so we've got in here now as well. So just with the indigo underneath where that waterfalls coming out, I'm going to make that really, really dark, like that. So that's really helping this sort of kink in the water stand out a wee bit. And then I'm just going to bring my indigo in. Same flicky motions that I did with the other pencil, just to start with. It's quite funny actually, walking out on the road. I walk past our neighbour's farm who, he has lots of sheep, which excites Jock, and we get on really well with them. And, you know, because you have things happen, like sometimes your cows escape, and it's really nice to have a neighbour that you can call and just say, you know, can you come and give us a hand? Because you don't, even though the road's quiet, you don't want your cows wandering about on the road. Like, you really, really don't want that at all. They've just bought quite an unusual breed, an Irish moiled breed, and they're really like brindled and speckly. They're brown and white, and they're absolutely beautiful. So he's got 4 young heifers. And the last day I was walking the dogs, they were actually moving them down the road, so we kind of shored up the rear for them. I have no idea how the microphone's not picking that up. It's so loud. Yeah, so it turns out he's put them in a field right beside the edge of the road, and they are very curious girls indeed. They're really friendly, and for some reason cows are fascinated by Jack Russells, and I think it's because they can't figure out what they are. Like, they don't realise that it's a dog. So these 4 girls are very taken with Woo, and they come up the minute they see us walking up the road. They get up and they come to the edge of the fence just to see what's happening, see what's shaking, and say hello. And it's really, really funny, but they'll let you pet them and everything. They're so tame. So the owner had come out the other day because he heard me standing talking to the cows as I do. And he says, oh, do you like them? Do you want them? And I'm like, Mr. Jem would go absolutely crazy if I just turned around and said, oh, by the way, I've just bought some heifers. So, but it's nice to be able to walk along there and, you know, have a wee chat with them and whatnot. Okay, so there we go. I'm just thinking I'm probably, even though my line's here, I might just bring this shadow up into this ridge here. Just for the sake of neatness. It's not going to make a huge difference to the aesthetic of what we're doing. It's just a bit more sensible, I think, because this will be casting a shadow because it's like a ridge, because it's kind of like an overhang. So let's just do that. I see I'm not doing anything different here. I'm just going back and forth between my indigo pencil and my burnt sienna. So, okay, great. So on this side, this is going to be a bit of a different story. We still want to have that feeling of the shadow being cast, but we still want to be able to differentiate between the 2 planes of this mountain. So in order to do that, I'm going to stick a layer of sanguine down first. Again, just this flicky motion. I would rather have the contrast than the technical realism of the shadow. That's a bit better summary of what I was trying to warble on about there for a wee minute. I'm just going to erase my graphite line here as well now. Take that away. Bring this down to about there, I think. Now obviously, because this part is on the opposite side of the sun to here, so we're going to have a mirror image of the colours here. So the ochre that we're using on the left side will now be on the right side because the sun's coming this way. So that's going to give you that nice sort of mirror image. So by using the sanguine, that's a much better transition colour into the palest colour as well. So that's going to work quite well too. So I'm just going to put another layer of this down here. Now I'm going to have to go very, very lightly with this indigo here. So more the side of my pencil. And we want this to be really soft so that we can work these colours in together. Really light pressure. I'm just kind of letting the pencil sit on the paper. I'm not actually pressing. This is quite a big section to be working in all in one go, but that's okay. So already we've got a lot more warmth on this side because we've used this sanguine, which is good. I see that this for me, this isn't technical in terms of the light source. This is about getting contrast between the 2 sides of this mountain. That's more important to me right now. Because the other thing you've got to remember as well in this, it's all relative. So even if we kept this side quite light, it would still depict itself as a shadow because we're using this indigo pencil and we're not using it elsewhere. So our brains will automatically, you know, calculate that up for us. And even though you're putting 2 together, you actually want your brain to make 5. Okay, so that's getting to where I want it to be. So I'm just going to continue to work my way down here now. Maybe these parts in here might be a bit darker. So I'm not going to get too hung up on the absolute precise technicalities. I want to keep this fun. I may go in and darken this part down a bit more later, but I'm going to leave it for now and I'm just going to switch over. So on the very edges here, I just need to take away some of this graphite I've got here. Messy. And I feel like over here we might be, you know, the sun might be starting to hit on these lighter parts. It's very difficult to tell the angle of these peaks though, so I'm just going to take it in its simplest form that they're square on. I'll maybe bring that up there a little bit. And then use the sanguine to bring this down into here. I feel like this is very abrupt here as well. I'm going to bring this indigo down here. So that is past my original pencil line, but it just feels right. I'm kind of getting the feeling, just the contours of this, that this is all like almost front facing. So I almost want to bring this shadow right down into here. I'm not entirely sure though. I think I'll go in with a bit of the burnt sienna. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about this. Yeah, I think that's fairly good. I'll worry about this section in a minute. Down in here, I want this to be quite dark just because it's kind of disappearing down. So you again, utilise more of the darker colours in here. Now this little section in here as well, this could be problematic too, in the sense that it's kind of tucked in behind things, but it's kind of not. And then we've got this ridge. So I'm going to sanguine this side. Because I actually feel like this would be in the shadow. I keep doing that way, I keep looking at it and I'm like, yeah. Right, okay. I think I'm going to have most of this section the same as here. I think that would be wise. Let's see, just in keeping with the... I know it's kind of bringing that shadow over a little bit, but I just feel like that's the way it should be. So I'm just going to go with my gut on this one. I might be completely wrong. It might end up looking a bit strange. But I am willing to take that risk. I don't think that was a bad shout in all truthfulness. But what I feel now is, because we're going to, for this set of peaks here, we're kind of going to be going back to what's going on over here. So this little one in here, I feel like should have the lighter colours, as if the sun's just catching it through this little gap here. So I'm going to do that in there. Again, that just adds a little bit of interest to what we're doing. Maybe a bit darker in there. Okay, so thinking about this side now, I want to get some ochre down in here. Now these are clearly disappearing down towards here and starting to sort of face the viewer again. So we're going to graduate that down, but I'm only going to the tree line just now anyway. I'll say we'll treat that section as a separate section. So I'm just going to bring that all the way down, there's no harm in that. And then we can use the sanguine in the bottom part here, so along this tree line. And then I'm just going to gradually bring this up so we can get a nice subtle shift between these two colours. And again, we can just work a little section at a time here. So I'm just taking at each of these ridges as, you know, as a single entity, if you like. And I feel that the sun will really be catching that part there, so I'm not going to continue to layer it up all the way up there. So I feel like we need to bring some of this shadow colour up in here a little bit. Just a little bit though. And this is going to be our dark side, so we're going to put our sanguine down here, and then we can use our sienna. And again, here we're going all out ochre. Yeah, burnt ochre. So we can just get a layer of this down. Now I'll probably do a similar thing down at this tree line as well on this side, and just put in a wee bit of the indigo. Well, let's just get this layer down first. So in with some sanguine in at the bottom here. And I'm just bringing it up in places where we've got these lines to show the contours. Again, there's nothing really to be achieved from having, you know, really flat uniform colour, because we're working with a natural structure here. So the more irregular it is, actually, the better it is. So I'm thinking about the darker parts and the likes of these ridges sticking out. The ochre's going to be quite heavy in there because that's not directly going to be hit by the sun because it's facing round this way. So I'm going to put a couple of heavier layers down there. And that's just a good place. Like, I've picked that because it's an obvious place to start. Because in the grand scheme of things, that maybe doesn't look like a sensible place, you know, if you're working methodically. But sometimes it's easier to go for the bits that look easy, if that makes sense. That definitely works for me, definitely. See, I tend to favour starting in darker areas, and I think it's something that stems from doing graphite drawings, because especially if I'm doing like pet portraits or animal drawings, the first thing I identify and pick out once I've got the initial sketch laid down is what are the darkest parts of the drawing, and you draw them in first. So in the case of dog portraits, it's usually the insides of the ears, the nose, you know, like the nostrils and the eyes. I know a lot of colourists though tend to start light, because that makes more sense when you're working in coloured pencil and also watercolour as well. But it's funny how I gravitate towards the darker sections first. Okay, so that little bit in there, I'm quite happy with that. We've kept the light colours, but it's a much richer version because I just feel like they're tucked in a little bit more. This section here, this is where the light's really going to be hitting down to probably about here. So we're going to go very lightly here and leave that paler area, you know, so it really looks like it's highlighted. Maybe make that part a little bit darker because it's kind of starting to tuck in there, isn't it? I want to build my sanguine up a little bit more in here now as well. And again, just down in this very bottom part, I'm going to stick in a little bit of my indigo. Because again, when we look at these ridges, this part comes much further down than what we were doing up here. So if these trees hadn't been here on this side and we could see the continuation of this mountain range on this side, we would probably do the same thing on this side. But this just comes so much further down. Something that always amazes me is we've literally done this section with 4 pencils, and I always think that's the amazing thing about pencil. You know, it's really nice to be able to get so much variation just by which order, how much pressure you put down, and how much of each pencil you decide to employ. I think that's just lovely. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. I feel like this is too pale down here though. Make a really dark line there. Yeah. So just show that there's some contours and ridges and bumps going on there. Yeah, that's better. Now again, thinking like we did earlier, this part here I feel would be quite dark. I'm going to press a little bit more heavily there. And then maybe it lightens out there, I don't know. Just making it up now. That's half the fun. Yeah, we'll maybe have a little bit of a lighter area there, and then we can bring our sanguine up and round here. These trees look remarkably like broccoli. Is it just me? Broccoli trees. I'm wondering how many people have children that call broccoli trees. Please let me know in the comments, or whether you called broccoli trees as a child maybe, because they do look like little trees. I like broccoli. Okay, yeah. Now, see, that looks as if it's standing out a bit too much. See, when I pull back? So I'm just going to make it a little bit more subtle. So really lightly. That needs to be darker in there. That's better. Okay, happy with that. Okay, we've just got this one last side to do now. Oh, and then we have a completed mountain range, which well, we've not got a completed mountain range. We've got these bits in here, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. So let's grab our sanguine. Get that in there. Get this all the way in here. Oh, that was the other funny story I was going to tell you. I'd posted up a wee while ago the picture of my finished trainers that I decorated myself. I'd posted it on Instagram as well as on the Facebook page as well. So the day that I decided to put them on was a Wednesday, and that's the day that I usually take my shop orders down to the post office to get shipped out. I'm just back to the burnt sienna here. I thought, well, that's a good way to test them out, because I tend not to leave the farm all that often. You know, most of my work is here. So I didn't want to wear them round the farm, because although it's dry just now, they would get dirty very, very quickly. So I thought, I'm going to the post office, I'm going down into the town, you know, and I have to drive there. So I thought, that's a really good first test for them. So I'll put them on. So I got down to the post office, and I go really early in the morning. Again, morning person. I'm usually down at the post office just after 8 and it's open. And I've got quite a good relationship with the postmaster now, because I see him every week, and he's a very, very, very nice man. And I walked into the post office, and he was standing behind the counter, and he said, "That is so weird." And I was like, "What's weird?" He says, "I was literally just looking at your Instagram and the pictures you'd put up of your custom trainers that you've done." And of course I flapped my leg up in there, and I was like, "Look, I've got them on." And he started to laugh, and he could not stop laughing. So he was very entertained and tickled by the fact that not only had I walked in when he was actually looking at the picture, but I had them on. He was impressed. That made me laugh. He's really awesome though. He's a cool guy. We have really interesting conversations because the post office is quiet at that time of day. He always kind of like chats a little bit. And it's really nice because obviously I don't have a lot of contact with the outside world generally, and he's one of the few people that I see regularly, so it's nice to have someone that's a wee bit chatty. He kind of knows everything that's going on in my life, you know, because he'll always say, "Oh, how's this and how's that?" He's super nice. It's nice when you've got a nice postmaster like that. He's really helpful too. Okay, I feel like this isn't dark enough. I'm going to go back in here and really darken that down. Because it's on the edge of the picture as well, I'm not so fussed about the texture and that kind of thing. Right, let's have a wee zoom out now and have a look. That's it. I'm quite happy with that. It's turning out the way I was hoping. I'm still not sure about this section here. I think I might want to darken that down. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that particular part. Just give me your opinions. That would be really helpful right now, because I'm not convinced. It's kind of sticking out a little bit too much for my liking. We do like a bit of variation, obviously, but I think it just looks a wee bit out of place. Yes, so next time what we'll do is we'll do our waterfall. And we'll move into this midsection. I'll probably finish the shadow area off first. And then we'll move on and we can maybe like work out from the centre. And I have this overwhelming sensation that this tent's red. I don't know why, but it's just speaking to me. It's going to be red, I think. But we've got some quite interesting stuff coming up here as well, because our trees are going to be casting some sort of shadows as well. I don't want to make that too extreme because I don't want to end up with a really dark picture. But we'll have a wee think about that and we can tackle that as we go along. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. I like these sort of chilled out videos and, you know, interspaced with everything else, because this is quite relaxing for me as well. And I feel as if I'm just like, you know, chatting to a group of friends. So that's excellent. I will leave you with this. Please stay safe and take care of each other. And I'll see you back in the cave really soon for another video. So have a good day, everyone, and bye-bye for now.